from FBI raids on their clubhouses.
FBI says it's working with state police to serve a search warrant involving the Bandidos motorcycle club.
To members facing federal charges.
A member of the Bandidos motorcycle gang will spend more than a year and a half behind bars.
These are the 10 most dangerous Bandidos leaders in the U.S. 1. Bob Dumas. In the early 1970s, the Hells Angels had already conquered California, spread across the West Coast, and established themselves as the most feared motorcycle club in America. They had chapters from coast to coast and international recognition, and they had their eyes on Texas. Unbeknownst to them, there was one man they could not face. Bob Dumas was already a rising power in the Bandidos, and not only that, he was also a successful Corpus Christi businessman. On the day of the takeover, Bob Dumas led a group of Bandidos to Padres Island. The Hells Angels were already there, so the confrontation was inevitable. Soon, a shootout erupted. When it ended, the Hells Angels had to retreat out of Texas, never to return. Bob Dumas didn't just drive the biggest rival out of an entire state. He also proved you could be both a millionaire businessman and the godfather of an outlaw empire, building the financial infrastructure that transformed the Bandidos into the criminal organization they are today. Bob Dumas was born in Hillsboro, Texas. After his military service ended in 1958, he moved to Corpus Christi with almost nothing and used his final savings to open a bar called the Plumore Club. The gamble paid off, and by 1966, he'd opened Action Billiard Supply Company, the only billiard supply business south of San Antonio, creating a monopoly in the region. By 1972, he owned multiple bars and properties across South Texas. In 1971, Dumas joined the Bandidos Motorcycle Club. It became the most important relationship of his life. While other Bandidos relied on violence and intimidation to maintain power, Dumas built a business empire. He became the first millionaire in Bandidos history, proving that outlaw bikers could operate successful, legitimate enterprises. His most famous venture was Legs, a topless bar towered over by a 22-foot-tall cutout of a bikini-clad woman locals called the Big Lady. The sign became instantly controversial. Starting in 1983, complaints poured in. By 1992, Mayor Mary Rhodes's office was drowning in calls demanding its removal, but the city had no legal grounds to act. He operated Legs for 29 years. Inside the club, Dumas earned the nickname Papa Bear. Members came to him for jobs at his bars and businesses. He offered financial advice, helped brothers set up their own legitimate operations, and created a network of legal enterprises that kept members out of prison while generating revenue for club operations. Law enforcement saw something different. To them, Dumas was the Godfather, not because he was the most violent member, but because he was the architect of the Bandidos' transformation from a motorcycle club into a sophisticated criminal organization with legitimate business fronts. Dumas was widely believed to hold the position of honorary national president, though he consistently denied having any official rank. From 1971 to 2020, Bob Dumas remained an active Bandido for 49 years. He was present during the club's most violent periods, witnessed countless crimes, and maintained his position while federal prosecutors dismantled chapter after chapter with RICO indictments. The most important part was that he never went to prison, never faced major federal charges, never appeared in a RICO case. They could never build a case that stuck. In November 2020, Bob Dumas died at age 86 in a Corpus Christi hospital, surrounded by his family. He died a free man, a millionaire, and a Bandido until his final breath. Dumas didn't found the Bandidos. Donald Chambers did. But Dumas created the financial blueprint that transformed a motorcycle club into a multi-million-dollar criminal organization. He drove out the Hells Angels and secured an entire state. 50 years after Padres Island, his system is still standing. 2. John Feffer. What began as a normal Saturday night at the Hog Stop Bar turned violent in seconds. Adam Burns, a Brothers East member, never saw John Feffer until the punch landed, sending him stumbling backward as the parking lot erupted. 5 more Bandidos rushed in. Burns hit the dirt. They kicked him, stomped him, and beat him for nearly 30 seconds before the gunfire started. He was shot 6 times, 5 bullets tearing through his back. Burns died on the gravel lot where he fell. Feffer staggered away with a gunshot wound to the arm, and when police searched him at the hospital, they found a pistol magazine. A photographer documenting the event recorded the entire attack, including the beating, the circle of men around Burns, and the moment shots were fired. But the violence was not random. Brothers East had split from the Bandidos in 2019, and national leadership responded with a smash-on-sight order. Any Brothers East member seen in public was to be attacked immediately. Feffer followed that order. At just 32, he was president of the Bandidos' Welcome to Hell chapter, a crew created specifically to target Brothers East. 2.5 years later, Feffer surfaced in another outbreak of violence. February 23, 2023, Bimba's Bar near Tomball. Nearly 70 Bandidos gathered for a regional meeting. They summoned 14 members of the Graybeards, a non-outlaw club that had unknowingly crossed a line by making peace with Brothers East. Feffer questioned one of the Graybeards, then attacked, 70 against 14. The beating was deliberate and overwhelming, and when it was over, the Bandidos stripped the Graybeards of their cuts, photographing the stolen vests and circulating them like trophies. Federal investigators later connected Feffer to a larger pattern of violence, including assaults, shootings, and arsons across Houston from 2020 to 2024. Prosecutors described Welcome to Hell as a highly violent chapter created specifically to eliminate rivals. In February 2025, federal prosecutors indicted Feffer and 13 others on racketeering, violent crime, firearm offenses, and witness tampering. He initially faced the death penalty for Burns's murder, but in October 2025, the Department of Justice declined capital punishment. Even without it, Feffer still faces the possibility of life in prison. A federal judge denied him bond. He remains in custody awaiting trial in May 2026. His case file includes more than 162,000 pages of records, hours of video, audio recordings, and extensive digital forensics. The Navy veteran who built the Welcome to Hell chapter has not been sentenced yet, but based on the evidence, he may spend the rest of his life in a federal prison cell. 3. David Vargas. It was the night of November 2, 2021, around 11:10 p.m., when 3 Brothers East members left the Blue Bayou Cafe and pulled onto the I-10 feeder road near Jacinto City. 26-year-old Michael Zimbrich took the wheel. Demarius Moore and Kevin Cicero rode with him. All 3 were members of Brothers East, the rival club that had broken away from the Bandidos and was now at the center of a violent turf war. Soon, a black SUV pulled up beside them. The driver was David Vargas, a full-patch Bandido. He matched their speed. The passenger window came down. Then bullets tore into the Brothers East vehicle, shattering glass and ripping through metal. Zimbrich was hit multiple times. Moore and Cicero were wounded but survived. Moments later, the SUV disappeared into the night. Michael Zimbrich died before help arrived. Vargas, 33, wasn't just another club member. Before joining the Bandidos, he served 2 tours in Afghanistan with the U.S. Army, earning a Bronze Star for valor and a Purple Heart after surviving an IED blast. Years later, a hit-and-run motorcycle accident cost him part of his right leg. He relied on a prosthetic, but it didn't slow him down. Despite the injury, Vargas joined the Bandidos and became an active enforcer in the Houston turf war. His combat training made him far more dangerous than the average shooter. And on that November night, those skills were used not on a battlefield, but on a Texas feeder road. Today, Vargas sits in federal custody. A judge denied him bond. He is awaiting a May 2026 trial on racketeering and murder, charges that could put him in a federal prison for the rest of his life. 5. Johnny Romo. Downtown. Johnny Romo wasn't just another Bandidos enforcer. As National Sergeant at Arms for the Bandidos Motorcycle Club, he was the bridge between orders from the top and violence on the ground. When National President Fay Pike wanted someone beaten, Romo delivered the beatdown. When Vice President John Portillo needed patches revoked, Romo flew to Central America to handle it personally. And when the Bandidos' national leadership decided someone needed to die, Romo assembled the hit squad. In March 2006, Anthony Benesch, a member planning to establish a Hells Angels chapter in Austin, Texas, was shot dead at a pizza restaurant in front of his girlfriend and 2 sons. The murder wasn't random street violence. It was an organized execution ordered by Pike, passed down through Portillo, and carried out by a squad Romo assembled and commanded. Texas was Bandidos' territory. Benesch tried to bring in their biggest rival. The Bandidos responded with a bullet. Romo rose through the Bandidos' ranks to become National Sergeant at Arms, one of the highest positions in the organization. The role made him the club's primary enforcer, responsible for carrying out orders from national leadership and maintaining discipline across all chapters worldwide. His jobs ranged from simple beatdowns to complex international operations. When internal conflicts erupted in Central American chapters, Romo traveled there to revoke patches and restore order. When members violated club rules, Romo administered punishment. When Pike needed someone eliminated, Romo organized the operation. The Benesch hit demonstrated Romo's methods. He didn't act impulsively. Portillo provided intelligence on the target. Romo assembled a squad of full-patch Bandidos members, including his own brother Robert, who was trying to join the club. They watched Benesch's house for 2 days, tracking his movements. When Benesch went to the pizza restaurant that Saturday evening, they followed. Robert Romo fired the fatal shot from a scope-fitted hunting rifle, while Johnny Romo, positioned in a separate car, gave instructions over a 2-way radio. After the Benesch murder, Romo became Pike's go-to person for enforcement tasks across the organization. If Pike needed violence, Romo delivered it. In spring 2014, Romo was arrested on drug charges, facing 60 months in prison. He made a decision that would have been unthinkable years earlier. He began cooperating with federal authorities. Romo wore a wire to record Portillo and other members making incriminating statements. He provided testimony that became crucial to the government's racketeering case against Pike and Portillo. Over 2 days on the stand in March 2018, he detailed how orders flowed from national leadership down to enforcers like himself. But Romo initially withheld information about the Benesch killing. He didn't mention his involvement until federal agents confronted him after he'd already been sentenced to just 24 months on the drug charges, far less than the 60 months he originally faced. In September 2017, both Romo brothers pleaded guilty to murder and firearm charges in aid of racketeering. 2 other members of the San Antonio Centro chapter who participated in the hit squad also pleaded guilty. In October 2018, Johnny Romo stood before a federal judge for sentencing. Prosecutors called him their top-ranking cooperator in the racketeering case. His testimony had helped convict Pike and Portillo, sending both to life in prison without parole. But cooperation came with consequences. Federal prosecutors revealed that authorities had recovered a letter signed by former Vice President John Portillo authorizing a hit on Romo. He now had a green light, a death sentence issued by the organization he once helped lead. Romo received 15 years without parole, a significant reduction from the life sentence he originally faced. During sentencing, he broke down crying multiple times, apologizing to Benesch's family. "I took a man's life. It's been a heavy burden on me for many years," Romo told the judge. Despite the green light and the certainty that Bandidos members would try to kill him in prison, Romo told the judge he would continue cooperating. "I will testify again, if necessary." 5. Jeffrey Fay Pike. And at the top of the chain was Jeffrey Fay Pike, National President of the Bandidos, a member since 1979, and the man who controlled the club's power structure across the state. The Benesch murder was just one part of Pike's larger operation. Under his leadership, the Bandidos pushed violence against rival clubs, ran meth and cocaine through Texas, and worked directly with the Mexican mafia. At the same time, Pike presented himself publicly as a businessman restoring classic cars. That image collapsed in January 2016 when federal agents raided his home during Operation Texas Rocker. Pike was arrested and charged under RICO for murder conspiracy, drug trafficking, and assaults carried out in the club's name.
The Bandidos president lives in Conroe, and this morning, the DEA, FBI, and a bunch of other federal and state agents arrested 3 of the Bandidos' highest-ranking leaders.
In 2018, a federal jury found him guilty on all counts. Pike received a life sentence plus 10 years. His vice president received 2 life terms. The shooters were eventually arrested as well. Jeffrey Fay Pike will die in federal prison. The man who once tried to keep Texas under one patch lost everything enforcing that claim. 6. John Xavier Portillo. Just after midnight on January 31, 2002, a quiet rest stop along Interstate 37, just south of San Antonio, became the setting for an ambush. Robert Lara, 24, wasn't a bandido, but he wasn't a random civilian either. He had ties to local street crime, and the Bandidos believed he was the one who shot their chapter secretary, Xavier 3 weeks earlier. That belief made him a target. 3 cars were waiting in the dark. When Lara stepped out, Wegers made the confirmation call. 6 Bandidos closed in. Richard Scarface Merla, one of the San Antonio chapter's enforcers, dragged Lara from the vehicle. Merla and Frederick Fast Fred Cortez opened fire. 11 rounds hit Lara. He died on the pavement where he fell. This wasn't random. 3 months earlier, Bandido member Xavier had been shot and killed outside Tiffany's Billiards, a well-known pool hall in northwest San Antonio. Inside the southwest San Antonio chapter, its president, John Xavier Portillo, decided that Lara was responsible. Whether the intel was right or wrong didn't matter. Portillo wanted payback, and he ordered the hit. He orchestrated everything. He supplied Merla with the murder weapon. After the killing, the crew regrouped at Portillo's brother's house, where Portillo told everyone to stay quiet. Then he used a torch to destroy the gun. Merla and Cortez were later awarded "Expect No Mercy" patches, recognition inside the club for carrying out violent business. Portillo had been moving up the ranks of the Bandidos since the 1990s. His San Antonio chapter was known inside the organization as its enforcement arm. After years of violence, Portillo rose even higher, first becoming National Sergeant at Arms and eventually National Vice President under Jeffrey Pike. For years, the Lara murder stayed unsolved. That changed in 2004, when Merla stabbed former boxer Robert Pekin Quiroga to death. With pressure closing in, Merla flipped, confessing to Lara's murder and naming Portillo as the man who ordered it. On January 6, 2016, federal agents arrested Portillo as part of Operation Texas Rocker. He was denied bond and stayed in custody until trial. In 2018, both Wegers and Merla testified against him. The jury found Portillo guilty of RICO conspiracy, murder in aid of racketeering, conspiracy to commit murder, drug trafficking, and firearms offenses. On September 24, 2018, Portillo, age 59, was sentenced to 2 consecutive life sentences plus 20 years in federal prison. No parole, no release date. He didn't say goodbye to his family before the marshals took him away. Portillo, once the enforcer president of San Antonio and later the national vice president, will die in federal prison. 7. Justin Cole Forster. In January 2016, federal authorities conducted one of the most significant operations in outlaw motorcycle gang history. In coordinated raids across Texas, they arrested the top 3 leaders of the Bandidos Motorcycle Club simultaneously: National President Jeffrey Pike, National Vice President John Portillo, and National Sergeant at Arms Justin Cole Forster. Operation Texas Rocker had been underway for 23 months. When the arrests came, prosecutors described the Bandidos as a criminal enterprise that directed members to commit murder, attempted murder, assault, intimidation, extortion, and drug trafficking. Forster was 31 years old and had been the national enforcer for 5 years. But unlike Pike and Portillo, who would go to trial and receive life sentences, Forster made a different choice. He became the first high-ranking national member to publicly testify about the inner workings of the Bandidos. Justin Cole Forster joined the Bandidos in 2006 at age 22. He later testified that he'd wanted to be part of the club since he was 10 years old. The screening process was rigorous. Prospects needed sponsors who'd known them for at least 5 years, and probation could last months or years. But Forster made it through, earned his full patch, and began rising through the ranks. In March 2011, Forster became National Sergeant at Arms, one of the 3 highest-ranking positions in the entire organization. His responsibilities included handling security at biker gatherings, enforcing discipline across all chapters, and carrying out orders from Pike and Portillo. When asked during his testimony what kind of people were in the Bandidos, Forster was blunt. A bunch of guys who love to ride a motorcycle, but we're guys who live by our way. You know, criminals. Forster's role meant he was the muscle behind Pike's orders. When members needed discipline, Forster handled it. When rival clubs needed confronting, Forster led the charge. When chapters fell out of line, Forster flew there personally to deal with it. In 2011, when Pike decided to split the Bandidos' Western Hemisphere chapters from international chapters in Europe and Australia, some West Texas members opposed it. Pike dispatched Forster with a crew to handle the opposition. They drove to Roswell, New Mexico, kicked out 16 members of the El Paso chapter, and took their vests. The El Paso President's patch was given to Pike and burned. The national chapter made t-shirts that read, "Roswell, one kick-ass party." In 2012 at Sturgis, South Dakota, when an Oklahoma chapter disrespected a national member, Forster led the retaliation. "We beat them up and made them ride home without seats on their bikes," he testified. In 2013, the Bandidos declared war on the Cossacks. That November, about 10 Bandidos confronted Cossacks in Abilene, Texas, took whips off their motorcycles and assaulted them, stabbing some with knives. The assault was called a fishing trip. Everyone got to catch a fish. Forster also dealt methamphetamine, selling ounce quantities in 2014. When Forster was arrested alongside Pike and Portillo, the club initially supported him. Other Bandidos put money in his jail commissary. The new president sent 4 lawyers. Forster turned each away. The club stopped putting money in his commissary. 9 months after his arrest, in October 2016, Forster pleaded guilty to 4 federal charges, including RICO conspiracy and drug trafficking. He faced life in prison, but agreed to cooperate. In March 2018, Forster took the stand in Pike and Portillo's trial. Over multiple days, he explained the Bandidos' inner workings, screening process, hierarchy, patches, and how the organization enforces rules through violence. He identified members. He described drug dealing. He detailed beatdowns. He explained how Pike and Portillo directed operations. When asked what he'd done by cooperating, Forster said, "What I did is unforgivable." Asked what he meant, he replied, "Snitching." His testimony helped convict Pike and Portillo. Both received life in prison without parole. In October 2018, Forster was sentenced. The judge noted he was no meek and mild participant, but fortunately never engaged in any direct activities resulting in the loss of life. Because of his cooperation, Forster received 5 years instead of life. "I take responsibility for my actions. I am truly sorry," Forster told the judge. "I'm ready to move on with my life and be a contributing member of society." Justin Cole Forster ranks 3rd on this list because he represents the highest-ranking enforcer who turned informant. As National Sergeant at Arms from 2011 to 2016, he carried out Pike's orders, disciplined members nationwide, led assaults on rival clubs, and helped maintain the Bandidos' violent grip on territory. But when faced with life in prison, Forster broke the code. He became the first national-level member to publicly testify against the organization. His cooperation dismantled the top leadership, sending both the president and vice president to die behind bars. The Bandidos built their empire on absolute loyalty. Justin Cole Forster shattered that belief, proving that even members who rise to the national level can be turned. And in doing so, he helped destroy the organization he'd wanted to join since he was 10 years old. 8. Ronald Hodge, stepmother. In December 1972, when founder Donald Chambers was sentenced to life in prison for double murder. The Bandidos needed a new leader. They chose Ronald Hodge, a former Marine who'd earned his full colors in just 1 month. So quickly he was nicknamed Mr. Prospect. Once elected national president, Hodge took a new name in deference to Chambers' moniker Mother. He became Stepmother, and, under his leadership, the Bandidos transformed from a Texas motorcycle club into an international criminal organization. Hodge didn't tone down the Bandidos' outlaw image. Throughout the 1970s, members were arrested for drug trafficking, running prostitution rings, extorting roadhouse and strip joint owners, and operating illegal pit bull fights. By the mid-1970s, the club had grown to an estimated 700 members with chapters in Texas, Alabama, New Mexico, South Dakota, Washington State, Indiana, and Montana. But Hodge's most significant achievement came in 1983 when he approved the first international chapter in Sydney, Australia. Anthony Mark Spencer, who'd visited the United States and been impressed by the Bandidos' hospitality and brotherhood, contacted Hodge about starting an Australian chapter. Through extensive correspondence, Hodge granted approval. The decision opened the door for international expansion that would eventually spread the Bandidos to over 20 countries. In April 1983, a Bandidos member was fatally shot by a member of the Banshees Motorcycle Club, a Dallas-based rival. On May 5, 1983, Hodge presided over a meeting of national officers in Houston. Present were the national vice president, 2 national secretary-treasurers, and multiple national sergeants at arms. Hodge ordered retaliation to be carried out by national officers. He instructed all members to clean up their appearances to avoid attracting law enforcement attention during the operation. He collected $100 from each Bandidos member to finance the plan. Over the following weeks, the organization gathered intelligence on Banshees members, obtained unregistered firearms, and established a safe house in case casualties required medical treatment. On July 5, 1983, the plan was executed. Bandidos members planted bombs underneath a Banshees member's van and next to a gas meter at another member's home. Both bombs detonated, causing property damage but no serious injuries. A planned assault on the Banshees Texarkana clubhouse with illegally converted MAC-10 machine guns never materialized. Members involved in the bombings used a Corpus Christi motorcycle racing event as their alibi, attending the club-organized gathering immediately after the attacks. On March 31, 1988, federal authorities indicted 23 Bandidos members for their participation in the conspiracy. Several members turned witness for the government. On November 7, 1988, 8 members pleaded guilty. The trial of the remaining 9 defendants ended on December 7, 1988, with 7 found guilty and 2 acquitted. Ronald Hodge received a 5-year sentence for conspiring to bomb homes and automobiles belonging to rival club members. His national vice president and 2 national secretary-treasurers received the same sentence. The feds thought that they finally had us with that one, that there would be no one left to run the club, one convicted national officer later said. But by the time we headed off to prison, we already had the next group of leaders ready to go. In 1992, 4 years after his conviction, Ronald Hodge died of heart disease. He was still considered a Bandidos member at the time of his death. 9. George Wegers. In 1998, George Wegers became international president of the Bandidos Motorcycle Club and immediately made a controversial decision. He moved the club's headquarters from Houston, Texas, the Bandidos' birthplace and spiritual home, to Bellingham, Washington, where he owned a Harley-Davidson shop. The move signaled something bigger. Wegers, who'd been a Bandidos member for decades, believed the club needed to change. He thought the Bandidos should be filled with men of respect, not pieces of shit, according to a former national officer who worked with him. Wegers launched what some called a mini-revolution within the club. He ended the tradition of urinating on new members during initiation. He banned routine beatings that were supposedly meant to show love and impart discipline. He told members the club should be about motorcycles, chrome, the open road, not indictments and prison sentences. His mantra was simple: stay out of the papers. Members could ride Harleys, drink beer, raise hell, as long as it didn't attract more than a few patrol units. A minor larceny here and there could be balanced by a charity run. Federal agents who investigated him later acknowledged that Wegers was known as a peacemaker, but reform had limits. Wegers was running an organization with over 2,400 members spread across multiple countries, many of whom had no interest in becoming law-abiding citizens. And federal authorities were watching. In June 2005, following a 2-year investigation, federal authorities indicted Wegers and 25 other Bandidos members and associates. 19 search warrants were executed. 2 were for properties owned by Wegers, resulting in the seizure of 4 handguns and 33 knives. Law enforcement had placed wiretaps on his phone, capturing conversations where he told the Bandidos' national secretary not to talk with federal agents. The charges were brought under the Racketeer-Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act, RICO, the statute created to prosecute organized crime syndicates like the Mafia. U.S. Attorney John McKay announced that Wegers had been running an organized criminal enterprise that virtually held communities hostage. Wegers was charged with conspiracy to commit racketeering, including witness tampering, trafficking in stolen motorcycles and motor vehicles, and other offenses. He faced up to 20 years in federal prison. In May 2006, Wegers reached a plea agreement. He admitted encouraging co-defendants to commit witness tampering and trafficking in stolen vehicles. In exchange, prosecutors recommended no more than 2 years in prison. On October 6, 2006, U.S. District Judge John C. Kofenauer sentenced Wegers to 20 months in prison, 3 years of supervised release, and a $10,000 fine. With time already served since his arrest, Wegers would be home by the end of the month. When the sentence was read, Wegers and his family smiled. Before sentencing, Wegers addressed the court with his long gray hair pulled back in a ponytail. He didn't disavow the club. "I'm very proud to be president of the Bandidos Motorcycle Club," Wegers said. "I've been a member for 31 years. The club is not a criminal organization." Assistant U.S. Attorney Ye-Ting Wu said Wegers showed only excuses, blame, and arrogance, instead of remorse. Prosecutors noted he'd packed his belongings before sentencing, expecting to walk out of court that day. 18 defendants ultimately pleaded guilty in connection with the case, receiving sentences ranging from probation to 5 years. Wegers received one of the lightest sentences despite being the international president. After his release, Wegers returned to the Bandidos, but his time back was short-lived. His successor, Fay Pike, had different ideas about how the club should operate. When Wegers appeared in a television documentary about the Bandidos, Pike was furious. "We don't do interviews, we don't do TV," Pike told other members. Appearing in media was a patch-pull offense, grounds for expulsion. Pike stripped Wegers of his patches and kicked him out of the organization. In 2010, Wegers suffered spinal injuries in a motorcycle crash while exiting Interstate 5 in Skagit County, Washington. He retired from the outlaw motorcycle world but continued to ride and advocate for motorcyclists. Whether reformer or racketeer, Wegers led the Bandidos during a period of massive international growth that set the stage for everything that followed. 10. Donald Eugene Chambers, mother. On March 4, 1966, a 36-year-old dock worker and Marine Corps veteran walked into a bar in San Leon, Texas. Donald Eugene Chambers had been a member of multiple motorcycle clubs but found them all too tame. He wanted something different, a club that lived by its own rules, answered to no authority, and embraced the outlaw lifestyle without apology. That day, Chambers founded the Bandidos Motorcycle Club. He named it after Mexican bandits who operated outside the law. He created the logo, a cartoon Mexican bandit holding a pistol and a machete. He chose red and gold as the club colors, honoring the Marine Corps where he'd served during Vietnam. And he established the club motto, "We are the people our parents warned us about." From that small bar in San Leon, Chambers built something that would last nearly 60 years and spread to over 20 countries. Every murder committed by a Bandido, Every drug deal, every act of violence traces back to one man, and one decision made in 1966. Chambers recruited members from biker bars across Texas, Houston, Corpus Christi, Galveston, San Antonio. Many were Vietnam veterans like himself, men who'd returned from war and couldn't adjust to civilian life. By 1968, Chambers established the club's second chapter in Corpus Christi. By the early 1970s, membership exceeded 100. From the beginning, Chambers established principles that would define outlaw motorcycle clubs for decades. Absolute loyalty to the club above everything else. Total secrecy about club business. No cooperation with law enforcement under any circumstances. Violence as the preferred method of resolving conflicts. He created the organizational hierarchy still used today. National president at the top, vice president, sergeant-at-arms, chapter presidents. A military-style structure that allowed rapid expansion while maintaining centralized control. As founder and first president, Chambers earned the nickname Mother. Every president who followed would reference that title in their own nicknames. On December 22, 1972, two drug dealers made a fatal mistake. Brothers Marley Leon Tarver, 17, and Preston LeRae Tarver, 22, sold baking soda to a Bandidos member called Chunky, claiming it was $1,000 worth of methamphetamine. When Chunky discovered the deception, he called Chambers. Chambers' response was immediate. "It's a ripoff. I'm going to get to the bottom of it." Chambers ordered Robert Munnerlyn, a club prospect, to load a shotgun, carbine, and ammunition into a brown Chevrolet truck with a white camper. Chambers, Munnerlyn, and other Bandidos members went to Chunky's residence to examine the substance. After confirming it was baking soda, Chambers sent 4 members to retrieve the Tarver brothers. The dealers were driven into the desert north of El Paso. Chambers ordered Munnerlyn to dig a grave. When the grave was ready, Chambers shot both brothers with a 12-gauge shotgun loaded with buckshot. The bodies were doused with fuel, set on fire, and buried in the shallow grave. On December 24, 1972, Munnerlyn contacted the FBI and confessed. By noon, he'd led officers to the burial site. That evening, officers executed a search warrant on Chambers' residence, seizing the shotgun, ammunition, a blood-soaked blanket, burned wallets, and other evidence. Chambers, along with Jesse Fain, Injun Deal, and Crazy Ray Vincente, was convicted of double murder. All 3 received life sentences. With Chambers in prison, Ronald Hodge took over as national president. But Chambers' influence never diminished. Even from behind bars, he remained a revered figure. Chambers was paroled in 1983 after serving 11 years. He retired from the club and settled in El Paso, where he lived quietly until his death from cancer on July 18, 1999, at age 68. He's buried at Forest Park, Lawndale Cemetery in Houston, beneath a gravestone inscribed with his name, Bandidos affiliation, and the club motto, "We are the people our parents warned us about." From a Texas bar in 1966 to a criminal empire across 20 countries, these 10 leaders built the Bandidos' 60-year legacy of violence. The most dangerous leaders aren't the ones who pull the trigger. They're the ones who build systems that outlast them, and the Bandidos are still operating. But they're not the only ones. Click the video on screen to see which club's leaders were even more ruthless.